The breaking point. The occupation year's Captain Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the underground bunker, watching the gray council ships patrol the skies above New Geneva. 15 years had passed since the Galactic Council arrived on Earth, promising peace and prosperity through their protective governance initiative. 15 years of watching her world slowly suffocate under alien rule. The Council had been clever about it. They didn't invade with fire and destruction like the old science fiction movies predicted. Instead, they came with contracts and trade agreements, with technology that made life easier and promises of joining a vast galactic community. Earth's governments had signed the treaties eagerly, desperate to gain access to faster-than-light travel and advanced medical technology. But the price had been higher than anyone imagined. Sarah remembered her father's words before he died in a council detention center. "They don't want to destroy us, Sarah. They want to own us. That's worse." The council's method was simple and effective. First, they integrated their technology into every aspect of human society. Communication networks, transportation systems, even basic utilities now depended on council-provided infrastructure. Then came the regulations, the permits, the taxes. Humans needed council approval to travel between cities, to start businesses, to have children. The final step was the most insidious. They began relocating humans to work in off-world colonies, breaking up families and communities. The official term was labor redistribution for galactic prosperity. Sarah called it slavery. The mining colony incident. Sarah's handheld communicator crackled to life with an emergency transmission. The voice belonged to Marcus Webb, her former colleague from the Earth Defense Force, and now leader of the Luna Resistance, Cell. "Sarah, you need to see this." Marcus's voice was tight with rage. "The Council just hit Europa Station." Sarah's blood ran cold. Europa Station was one of the largest human mining colonies, home to 50,000 civilians including families and children. It was also supposedly under Council protection as an essential resource facility. "What happened?" Sarah asked, though she already feared the answer. "They said there was a contamination event. Orbital bombardment. The entire colony is gone. No survivors." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the familiar weight of grief and fury that had become her constant companion. Europa Station had been more than just a mining colony. It was a symbol of human expansion into the solar system, a place where children born on Earth could look up at alien stars and still call somewhere home. "It wasn't contamination," Sarah said quietly. "The miners were organizing. They were going to strike." "That's what we think too," Marcus replied. Council couldn't risk having their model workers getting ideas about rights and fair treatment. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts. She walked to the memorial wall where names of the dead were etched into recycled metal plates. Soon she would need to add 50,000 more names. The underground awakens. Within hours of the Europa Station massacre, encrypted communications began flowing through hidden networks across the solar system. The Resistance had been planning for this moment for years, building cells on Earth, Mars, the asteroid belt, and dozens of smaller colonies. They called themselves the Free Human Alliance, though most Council propaganda referred to them as terrorists. Sarah made her way to the main operations center, where holographic displays showed resistance cells activating across known space. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant James Rodriguez, was coordinating with cell leaders. "Status report," Sarah ordered. "All cells are green," Rodriguez replied. "Mars is ready to move. The asteroid miners are standing by. Even the deep space stations are in position." Sarah nodded. The network had taken years to build, using salvaged Council technology and human engineering ingenuity. They had learned to communicate through quantum entanglement devices hidden in everyday objects, to move weapons and supplies through maintenance tunnels that Council forces ignored, to blend in with the millions of humans who still believed cooperation was possible. "What about the Council response?" Sarah asked. "They're treating Europa as an isolated incident. Standard lockdown procedures, but no system-wide alert. They don't realize we're connected." That was the Council's greatest weakness, Sarah reflected. They saw humans as individuals, not as a species. They couldn't comprehend the invisible bonds that connected every human settlement, the shared stories and dreams that made them one people, despite the vast distances of space. The Choice High Counselor Zektar stood in the command center of the Council's primary orbital station, reviewing reports from across the human territories. The Europa Station incident had been regrettable but necessary. The human workers had been showing signs of collective resistance, and such behavior could not be allowed to spread. Status of human population centers? Zektar asked his aide. All major cities remain stable, the aide reported. Minor protests in several locations, but nothing our peacekeeping forces cannot handle. Zektar nodded. Humans were predictable in their grief. They would mourn their dead, make angry speeches, and then return to their daily routines. It was the nature of their species to accept authority once properly demonstrated. Sir, another aide interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from the human leadership. They're requesting a meeting. Patch it through, Zektar ordered. The holographic display activated, showing a human woman in a simple gray uniform. Zektar recognized her from the files as Sarah Chen, a former military officer who had been monitored as a potential troublemaker. High Counselor, Sarah began, her voice steady despite the circumstances. I am speaking on behalf of the Free Human Alliance. We reject the Council's authority over human space and demand the immediate withdrawal of all Council forces from human territory. Zektar almost laughed. You are hardly in a position to make demands, human. Your entire species exists at the Council's discretion. We are done existing at anyone's discretion, Sarah replied. We are done being your slaves, your experimental subjects, your convenient scapegoats. We are done pretending that this partnership was ever anything but conquest. You speak of conquest as if it were a negative, Zektar said. The Council has brought order to your chaotic species. We have given you technology, purpose, a place in the greater galactic community. You have given us chains, Sarah shot back, and we are breaking them. The declaration. What happened next would be remembered as the moment humanity chose freedom over safety. Sarah looked directly into the camera, knowing that her words would be heard on every human world, in every settlement, by every person who had ever wondered if they were truly free. To every human listening to this broadcast, know that you are not alone. Know that across the stars your brothers and sisters stand ready to fight for something the Council can never understand, the right to determine our own destiny. She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. The Council thinks we are weak because we value life. They think we are divided because we come from different worlds. They think we are powerless because we refuse to use their weapons against innocent people. They are wrong on all counts. The transmission continued for another 10 minutes with Sarah outlining the Resistance's goals and capabilities. She spoke of hidden weapons caches, of sympathizers within Council ranks, of technologies that humanity had been developing in secret for over a decade. Most importantly, she spoke of something the Council had never encountered in their centuries, of galactic dominance, a species that valued freedom more than survival. The Council's response High Counselor Zektar watched the transmission with growing concern. The human spoke with a confidence that suggested more than mere bravado. Intelligence. Reports had indicated some level of organized resistance, but nothing like what Sarah Chen was describing. Initiate Protocol 7, Zektar ordered. Full martial law across all human territories. Detain all known resistance sympathizers. Prepare the orbital bombardment platforms. Protocol 7 was the Council's standard response to planetary rebellion. It involved systematically destroying population centers until the surviving inhabitants surrendered unconditionally. It had been used successfully on dozens of worlds over the centuries. But as reports began flowing in from across human space, Zektar realized that this situation was different. Council facilities were under simultaneous attack on 17 different worlds. Communication networks were being jammed or hijacked. Even more troubling, human workers in Council facilities were disappearing, taking sensitive equipment and information with them. Sir, his aide reported, We're losing contact with the Mars garrison. The asteroid mining platforms are reporting explosions. Something is happening to our deep space monitoring stations. Zektar stared at the tactical display as red warning lights began appearing across the map of human space. For the first time in his long career, he felt something he had never experienced when dealing with conquered species. Uncertainty. The humans were not behaving like any species the Council had encountered. They were not trying to hide or flee. They were not attempting to negotiate or compromise. They were fighting back with a coordination and determination that defied everything the Council thought they knew about human nature. Prepare the battle. Fleets, Zektar ordered. If the humans want war, we will give them war. But we will make sure it is a war they cannot win. As the first part of humanity's greatest challenge began, Sarah Chen stood in her command center, watching the tactical displays that showed the opening moves of what would become known as the Human Liberation War. The Council had superior technology, more ships, and centuries of military experience. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated what humans were willing to sacrifice for freedom. Humanity unleashed the hidden arsenal. The Council's first mistake became apparent within hours of declaring martial law. As their forces moved to secure human settlements, they discovered that their intelligence on human capabilities was catastrophically incomplete. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the war room of the Resistance base, watching real-time feeds from across human space. The Council ships that had been patrolling Earth's skies for 15 years were now burning in the atmosphere, brought down by weapons that weren't supposed to exist. Status report. Sarah called to her communications officer. Mars Base 7 is secure. The Council garrison surrendered after we disabled their ships. Asteroid belt mining platforms are under our control. Most importantly, the Luna shipyards are operational. Sarah smiled grimly. The Luna shipyards had been humanity's greatest secret. For 12 years, under the guise of mining operations, human engineers had been building warships using a combination of salvaged Council technology and innovative human designs. The ships were smaller than Council vessels, but faster, more maneuverable, and crewed by people who had nothing left to lose. What about the deep space stations? Sarah asked. They're reporting successful captures of Council communication relays. We now have access to their military communications across 3 sectors. Lieutenant Rodriguez approached with a datapad. Sarah, you need to see this. We intercepted a Council transmission. They're mobilizing their main battle fleet. Sarah read the intercepted message, her expression growing serious. The Council was bringing in the Hegemony Fleet, their most powerful military force. 200 ships, each capable of devastating entire planets. How long do we have? She asked. 48 hours before they reach Earth space. Sarah nodded. They had always known this moment would come. The Council would not accept defeat from what they considered a primitive species, but humanity had been preparing for this exact scenario. The Council's surprise High Counselor Zektar stood in the command center of the Council flagship, staring at reports that defied logic. Human forces were not just resisting, they were winning. Across 17 star systems, Council installations were falling to coordinated attacks. How is this possible? Zektar demanded. Our intelligence indicated the humans possessed no significant military capability. Admiral Vorth, the Council's chief military strategist, reviewed the tactical data with obvious confusion. Their ships are using technology we don't recognize. Some kind of hybrid design that combines our systems with their own innovations. More concerning, they seem to understand our tactical doctrines better than we understand theirs. The truth was becoming clear to Zektar. The humans had been planning this rebellion for years, possibly since the occupation began. They had been watching, learning, adapting, and preparing while presenting a facade of cooperation. What are our losses? Zektar asked. 17 installations destroyed or captured. 300 personnel missing or dead. Most troubling, they've captured several of our communication hubs. They may have access to our strategic communications. Zektar felt something he had never experienced in his centuries of service: respect for an enemy. The humans had not just rebelled, they had outmaneuvered the Council's intelligence services and military commanders. "Initiate the hegemony protocol," Zektar ordered. "Bring in the full battle fleet. We will end this rebellion decisively." The battle for Earth. The hegemony fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, 200 ships arranged in the classic Council battle array. Each ship was a masterpiece of galactic engineering, carrying enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. High Counselor Zektar watched from the flagship's bridge as Earth appeared on the tactical display. The blue-green world looked peaceful, undefended. Intelligence reports suggested the human fleet was scattered across the outer planets too far away to interfere with orbital bombardment. "Begin with the major population centers," Zektar commanded. "Target New Geneva, Neo-Tokyo, and Atlantic City. Make the bombardment visible from space. I want every human to see the price of rebellion." The fleet moved into bombardment formation, weapons charging for the devastating assault that would break human resistance forever. But as the ships approached Earth's atmosphere, something unexpected happened. The planet's surface erupted with light. Hundreds of concealed weapons platforms hidden in mountains and ocean trenches opened fire simultaneously. The weapons were unlike anything in the Council's databases: human-designed particle cannons that could penetrate Council shields, missile systems that moved faster than Council point defense systems could track. "Evasive maneuvers," Admiral Vorth shouted. But it was too late. The first wave of human fire struck the fleet with devastating accuracy. 12 Council ships exploded in the first 30 seconds of combat. Sarah Chen watched the battle from the command bunker, her heart pounding as humanity's greatest gamble played out above the atmosphere. The hidden defense platforms had been another secret project, built using modified Council technology and powered by fusion reactors that the Council had never detected. "Second wave launching," her weapons coordinator reported. "Human fleet moving in from the asteroid belt." The human fleet appeared on the tactical display like a swarm of angry insects, smaller ships moving in patterns that confused the Council's targeting systems. The human pilots flew with a desperate creativity that no Council tactical manual had prepared for. The psychological warfare. What the Council hadn't anticipated was humanity's greatest weapon: their understanding of fear. For centuries, the Council had ruled through intimidation, but they had never faced an enemy that could turn that weapon against them. Sarah activated the wide-band communication system, broadcasting on all Council frequencies. Her voice reached every Council ship, every base, every soldier in human space. "Council forces, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Free Human Alliance. You came to our world promising peace, but you brought slavery. You came offering partnership, but you delivered conquest. You came believing you were superior, but you were wrong." She paused, letting the words sink in as human fighters swarmed around the massive Council ships like wolves attacking giants. "For 15 years, you have underestimated us. You saw our diversity as weakness, not realizing it was strength. You saw our emotions as primitive, not understanding they were weapons. You saw our individuality as chaos, not recognizing it as adaptability." The Council forces were beginning to break formation, their perfect battle lines dissolving under the chaotic human assault. Council ships were designed to fight other Council ships in predictable formations. They were not prepared for human tactics that ignored every rule of galactic warfare. "We are not the helpless species you conquered," Sarah continued. "We are the descendants of predators who climbed to the top of our world's food chain. We are the children of explorers who crossed oceans in wooden ships. We are the heirs of warriors who never surrendered, no matter the odds." The Turning Point High Counselor Zektar watched in horror as his fleet began to fragment. Council ships were fleeing in all directions, their crews in panic. The humans had done something no species had achieved in over 1,000 years. They had broken the Council's psychological dominance. "Sir," Admiral Vorth reported, his voice shaking, "we've lost 47 ships. The humans are using tactics we've never encountered. They're targeting our command structures, disrupting our communications, making our formations useless." But the real shock came when human voices began speaking on Council communication channels. Somehow, The humans had infiltrated the Council's secure networks and were broadcasting messages directly to Council personnel. The messages were simple but devastating. You are fighting for an empire that sees you as expendable. We are fighting for our homes, our families, our freedom. Which cause is worth dying for? Council forces began surrendering. Not in large groups, but one ship at a time. Individual commanders making the decision that their lives were worth more than the Council's expansion. Some ships simply powered down their weapons and withdrew from the battle zone. Others actually changed sides, joining the human fleet. This is impossible, Zektar whispered. How can a primitive species defeat the Council? Admiral Vorth looked at the tactical display, where human ships were now pursuing the retreating Council fleet. Perhaps, he said quietly. They were never as primitive as we believed. The new reality. The battle for Earth lasted only 6 hours, but its consequences would reshape the galaxy. For the first time in recorded history, a species had successfully rebelled against Council rule and won. The hegemony fleet, the Council's symbol of invincible power, limped back to Council space with less than half its original strength. Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the Luna base, watching the last Council ships disappear into hyperspace. The war was far from over. The Council would return with new strategies, new weapons, new allies. But something fundamental had changed in the galaxy's balance of power. Status report, she asked Lieutenant Rodriguez. Council forces have withdrawn from all human territories. Our fleet is pursuing the retreating ships but maintaining defensive positions. Most importantly, we're receiving communications from other species. 12 different civilizations have contacted us, asking about our liberation methods. Sarah nodded. That was perhaps the most important victory of all. For centuries, the Council had maintained power by convincing conquered species that resistance was futile. Now, humanity had proven that even the most powerful empire could be defeated by a determined people fighting for their freedom. The real work begins now, Sarah said. We need to help other species find their own paths to freedom. We need to build a galaxy where conquest is no longer acceptable, where diversity is celebrated instead of suppressed. She looked out at the stars where human ships now patrolled space that had been controlled by the Council for over a millennium. Humanity had won its freedom, but more importantly, they had shown the galaxy that freedom was possible. The Council had pushed too far, and now they faced a galaxy where their former victims were no longer afraid. The age of human submission was over. The age of galactic liberation had begun. In the depths of space, other species watched and learned. The humans had shown them something that had been forgotten for centuries, that freedom was not a gift to be granted by the powerful, but a right to be taken by the brave. The galaxy would never be the same.